Here we go. We are back for another episode of Chargers Powder Hour. Colin Appel, Miles Raruka here. My man, how are we doing? How are we feeling on this terrific Tuesday?
Doing great, man. We got a bunch more training camp news to hit you guys with. Happy to be here, man. You know, football season's rolling in. We got our first preseason game this weekend, so things are looking up for us football fans. How are you doing, my man?
It's going great, man. First preseason game. I got an insane parlay going already for preseason. Just kidding. I did find out that you can bet though on the preseason. I
Is
didn't
there
know that
like
was a thing.
player? Is there player props? Because
I don't know. On the FanDuel app, I just saw that. I mean, I know you could already place bets for week one, but I was scrolling and I saw that they have preseason betting, which I think is extremely dangerous, but also could be extremely fun. But
that's
preseason's
that.
so wacky, man. Like I feel like you never know who's going to win. It's just like a bunch of fourth and fifth string guys going at it.
Yeah, that's bet at your own risk for sure. I will be avoiding all of those lines. I can promise you that. I don't even know how they set lines for that, like how they set plus minuses for that. Like how does
Yeah,
anybody know?
I have no idea. I was
Do they
amazed when I
just
saw it. I think
go back to like
the only safe bet would probably be the funnest. I don't know. I think it's been like the funnest preseason storyline for the last couple of years, and that's the Ravens. They have a 23 game preseason winning streak going on, which is just it means nothing, which is hilarious, but it's also just like to win 23 games
it's
in a
like
row in any capacity is
impressive.
it's just fucking funny.
Like
So
it makes you think like do the Ravens just try harder in preseason games? Do the Ravens just always have good backups, or I don't
I
know.
will
Like
say
there's a lot to look into that.
it probably is a testament to the depth and just the roster construction in general. I mean, a lot of those guys probably will end up getting cut, but I mean, I also think the Ravens are one of those teams like they've been hit hard by injuries over the last couple of years, and they always still seem to be there. Like unlike the Chargers, who when we've gotten, I mean, last year we kind of you know turned it around and we're still able to make the playoffs and all that stuff. But usually when we get hit by the injury bug, it just folds our entire season. And I feel like the Ravens are one of those teams that we've seen get really injured, but it just doesn't seem to really affect them that much. Like they always find a way to be there towards the end of the season. So
I
I mean,
mean,
maybe
yeah,
it's a testament to their depth.
I guess so. That's the only conclusion I can come to because I mean I couldn't even tell you the last time that we won like 3 games in the preseason. Not that I care whatsoever, but impressive.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know if there is a bet to be made. Maybe just bet on the Ravens to extend that streak. But yeah, I will not be participating in any preseason betting myself because, like I said, that just seems like a dangerous game. But yeah, man, I'm good. I'm ready to talk some Chargers football. We've had a few things happen since the last time we caught up. We've had the inter squad scrimmage on Sunday night that we're gonna talk about. We've had a couple more days of practice yesterday and today. So some more notes and news from that. And then we're just going to talk some different position battles, some highlights, some guys that continue to stand out. And we'll eventually, towards the end of the episode, even do a little segment called Red Flags. So we'll get to that later, but that'll be a fun segment. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, man, before we get it kicked off, do you have anything that you're sipping on or are you dry again?
I'm dry again, dude. I don't know, man. I got no explanation for you this time
Get
other
to
than
the fucking supermarket.
I don't
Pick
have
up a six
money. I
pack.
am a college student that is broke. Could I go afford one beer? Probably, but just the duress of me getting in my car and driving to the store right now and getting a beer and having to show my ID just
All right, here's what
like
I'm gonna do.
I'm just talking about football, man.
All right, I'll Venmo you some beer money next episode. That way
Dear God.
we can get you rolling on that.
All right. I will have a
I
beer
mean,
next episode. I
I
can
actually
promise
haven't
that.
drank beer the last few episodes. I've been making some cocktails today. I got a Moscow Mule.
I
So,
know I know that you asked me if I was drinking anything just so you can say what you were drinking.
dude, of course I have to.
I should have just asked. I should have just asked you, honestly. That's on me.
Hey, it's all right. You'll pick up on it next time.
Yeah,
You'll
you're
pick
right.
up on that cue. But no, last time I think I had a margarita. So I've been mixing it up, and I don't mind it because towards the end of the episode I am buzzing pretty good. So it just you know makes for good content, I guess.
Yeah, no kidding, man. So
All right, man. Well, let's get into it, man. First order of business. Like I said, the Chargers over the weekend on Sunday evening held their first inter squad scrimmage of training camp, and some news and notes from that. I mean, it was a ninth practice overall of camp, and um, I think the first thing that really stood out to me was there's a lot of asterisks to be mentioned. I mean, this team has been pretty much. I mean, there's been an illness like bug on this squad for about the last week or so. I don't know if it's COVID or if it's just a cold or a flu, or I don't know what it is, but it's there's an illness going around in camp, and there was a lot of people sidelined because of that. I don't have the list in front of me, but I could tell you I know. Um, I believe Joey Bosa missed time. I believe Rashawn
mm-hmm.
Slater missed time.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Bailey missed time as well. I know there was a few others.
Quentin Johnston was another one that missed time.
He missed practice today because he's dealing
Mm-hmm.
with that. So yeah, there. I mean, he was on the field Sunday, but yeah, a lot of offensive players missing. The offensive line definitely was lacking some serious help there. Obviously, with Slater being out, and then even Trey Pipkins, he took some reps, but Austin Pleasance was in for the majority of the reps at right tackle. Exactly. that
Yay!
expression was
I'm happy that we're
summed up.
talking about training camp right now. If we were having this same conversation, we're 5 weeks into the season, I'd be very concerned about the state of our team. So
Yes, and I mean, look, this is something that might be a theme to today's episode. Is just, I guess, call it concerns, call them red flags, and again, we'll talk about those later specifically. But um, it's just really scary how thin some of these position groups are. Some more than others, but I don't think there is one more thin or one thinner, I should say, than the offensive line. I
yeah,
mean, we're
yeah,
already seeing it in camp with, obviously Rashawn Slater. That's a huge piece. But I mean, even just the next level of guys. Zach Bailey was out, so didn't really get to see him. But I mean, Foster Sorrell in at left tackle, and Austin Pleasance in at right tackle. Uh, they're not too far down the depth chart, and this is a unit that we've come to know over the last, probably decade of football. That's just been devastated by injuries, so it's a concern. And we're already kind of seeing that early in camp. So again, take it for what it's worth. It's, those guys are out due to illnesses and not, something more serious. So obviously, come week one, they're going to be there. Knock on wood, barring anything else. But to me, it just shows the lack of depth there, and the room for error on the offensive line is very, very thin.
yeah, and that showed in the play during the scrimmage. It really sounded like that there were bull rushes coming from all over the place. Khalil Mack had himself a day. Sounded
Morgan
like
Fox,
Morgan Fox, Tuli, Tuli
Tuli
also
Pelotu.
Tuli Pelotu also got home on a pass rusher too. Defensive line had a day yesterday, obviously without Rashawn Slater and with Trey Pipkins taking limited reps. That's not really overly surprising to me that the defense had, especially the defensive line, had the day that they did yesterday, but it's definitely concerning. Just knowing that we're one injured guy away from some pretty poor backups playing some really meaningful snaps this season. So scary to
Yeah.
think about.
And look, there's still time. I mean, they can address that, but it it just seems like, this is probably the offensive line that we're gonna roll with throughout the year. I mean, there could be some depth moves down the line if it, is necessary, but um, early in camp, like I said, take it for what it's worth. That just seemed to be a common theme and something that I don't think you can talk about this scrimmage without, because due to the you know guys that were out on the offensive line, the offense did not get much done. The pressures were there, like you said. The defensive line pretty much ate the entire scrimmage. The offense kind of got things going later, in the scrimmage after a field goal period, so they had a time to kind of regroup and make some adjustments. But for the most part, I mean, the defense won the scrimmage, and again, you know what that's worth to you, on August 8th, I don't know. But again, we're seeing some of these guys now for the first time, live reps with pads. So it's just, kind of our first glimpse at a lot of these, fringe players, and also just, newer depth pieces that we're not used to seeing a whole lot of. So, um, it's, I don't really know what else to say about the scrimmage other than, oh, I did want to point out that, and I think you even tweeted about this the other day. Cameron Dicker is trending upward in regards of the kicking battle, with Dustin Hopkins, and I don't know if it's fair or unfair that Hopkins hasn't had a chance to really compete for it yet at this point. But it might just have been the opportunity that Dicker needed to separate himself in the discussion of who's going to be the team's starting kicker, because he's now gone 46 for 50 in camp, and he went 10 for 10 on Sunday, at the scrimmage. So he's Mr. Consistency, and he's doing everything that they're asking him to do at this point.
Yeah, and mix that in with the fact that DeAndre Hopkins, Jesus, dude. Dustin Hopkins has not been out on the field much as of the last week. I think it's far and away kicker's battle to lose at this point. I mean, 46 for 50 during camp. And I know a lot of people, give the excuse that, we don't know what the strength of his leg is. We haven't seen that in a game yet. We really have not seen him attempt. I think he went 1 for 2 on 50+ yarders last season. That's just not something that we've seen yet. But I mean, consistency in the kicking game is something that this team has struggled with for years, and it's a conversation that I feel like we have year in and year out. I think Dicker's our guy, and I think he needs to be our guy going forward.
I like what he represents. Like I said, I mean, he's consistent. He seems to have a slow heartbeat. I think you need that, especially with what this fan base has gone through with kickers over the years. I mean, we've seen way too much of the pull left, push right. Um, it's just hasn't gone our way, and it feels nice. Like I said, this last year, and ton of credit given to Ryan Ficken, who's come in and really like nailed down this special teams. But yeah, it's just nice to have some consistency at that position, and I just feel like you're messing with the juju to then you know put Hopkins back in there, and you lose Dicker or someone else picks him up. We've also lost good kickers over the years that we didn't, for if
I don't get
maybe it's
it.
our
No,
fault for ditching them too
some
early. Josh Lambo, Youngway Koo. I mean, it there's guys that I feel like, Cameron Dicker, I feel like is just the guy for this team. And also, to be fair, dude, does this team need a kicker to kick 55 yards? Like, knowing Brandon Staley, fourth and Staley, if that's still a
very
thing.
true.
If it's, outside of 50, like they're probably just going to go for it and, get into that 45, 48 yard range. And if, the drive stalls, then you can look at bringing him out. But I don't think the way this offense plays and the way Staley, what his philosophy is, I just don't know if there's a need to have that, 60-yard kicker in your back pocket. However, that's not to say it wouldn't be nice to see him make a 55 or a 56 yarder, because
65.
sometimes that's just what it is. Like, you're facing a 55 yarder to win the game, and you got 2 seconds. Like, you have to kick it. So there are situations where it's like you just gotta. I mean, it's gonna have to happen at some point. So it would be nice to know that he has that in his bag as well.
Yeah, 100%, man. That's a really good point that I never even really considered. If we're looking at 4th and 1 from like the 33, I'm on board with going for that 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
So that's a really good argument that I never picked up on until you brought that up, and it really got me kind of thinking that I would much rather have this consistent guy that is going to be nails from 45 and in, 9 out of 10 times. I'll take, even in this day and age, I'll take 9 out of 10 times for a kicker. Really good kickers are kind of a rare breed in the NFL these days. But if we can get a guy that's consistent on extra points, consistent inside the 30-yard line, consistent in the red zone, that's the kind of guy I want. I don't really care if you can kick 65-yard nukes. That's cool. But with how good this offense should be, that shouldn't be a necessity.
Yeah, 100%. And look, a lot of times the kicks that have caused us so much heartbreak and tears are the ones that are the 38, 39, 42 yarders. Like, it's not even the 57 yarder, because at least with that, you kind of feel a little better. It's like, well, shoot, it was a
It's like,
57 yarder.
yeah, it's a toss up if he's going to make
Right.
it or not. It's not a gimme.
Right. But when your guys shanking a 41 yarder for the win, I mean, you want to punch the TV. Like,
Been there.
it's agony. So, I mean, yeah, the more consistent guy, the guy that's, let's be honest, like I think it's cool that, you know, the Chargers brought Dustin Hopkins back to compete for this job. Like, they didn't just say, okay, like, no, we're gonna ride with him, and that's that. So, I mean, it's cool that they have kind of had this battle. Again, Hopkins hasn't really had a chance to be out there much. But it just seems like all the signs keep pointing to Dicker as the starting kicker. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like that's just kind of the way it's played itself out.
Yeah, I think at this point, Hopkins is going to have to go out there and drill like 15 straight 50-yarders in a row. I think Dicker has really just run away with this thing. And, thanks for your service, Dustin Hopkins. Thanks for the win against the Broncos last year. But if this is the end of the road, let's go with the young buck. Let's go with Cameron Dicker.
Dustin Hopkins, Chargers legend, will always have the Monday night victory over the
I will tell my
Broncos.
I can't wait to tell my grandchildren about the Dustin Hopkins legacy game.
The Dustin Hopkins Chargers statue game. What a game, man. Build the statue now for Dustin Hopkins.
Build the statue for Dustin, but I'm gonna wear my Dicker jersey loud and proud this season.
Dude, yeah, now you make me want a Dicker jersey. What's his new number?
Fuck, man. I don't know. Well, no, I feel like it's single digits, is it not?
I can't remember. I think you might be right though.
I
Because
don't know.
who grabbed, was it 15?
Guyton Dicker got
Oh, that's
15 only
right.
last year because Guyton tore his ACL.
Freaking Jalen Guyton coming back in. This is probably going to be a good segue then into the next conversation, because we're definitely going to talk about wide receiver 5, and we can't talk about that without mentioning Jalen Guyton, but also without mentioning John Hightower.
Speaking of building a statue, man, if we could get a training camp statue, this man deserves to be on it for sure.
100%, man. This guy, rightfully so, has garnered a bunch of buzz throughout the fan base and throughout I mean, even just players and coaches and other, members of the media that have been following camp so far. Um, I mean, dude's got 8 touchdowns, 8, and 4 of them are 50 or longer than 50 yards. So he's definitely a deep threat. He's got that speed that can stretch the field. He's he possesses that speed that Guyton has. So, I think this is a very, very, oh gosh, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. But I don't think there's any way. I mean, preseason starts this weekend, so we'll have more to go off of. But I just didn't not think John Hightower would probably already have a spot locked up on this roster before preseason play. But I think he might already have it locked up.
I'm really excited to watch him play this weekend, along with our other competitors for the wide receiver 5 spot, which we will get into here shortly. But man, John Hightower gives me Tyron Johnson vibes so much. Both the same build. They're both 6'1", both really fast,
That's a good comparison.
obviously on the field, and just somebody that I think Justin Herbert's going to have a ball with and has been having a ball with so far at training camp. So I'm hoping
Yeah.
John Hightower can come in and be that replacement for Tyron Johnson, who us as a fan base were really kind of upset when he left. So let's see what he brings, man. I'm really excited to watch him come this weekend and hopefully for the rest of the preseason and into the regular season, because I have loved what this dude has brought to the table so far in training camp.
For me, it's the profile along with it. That sells me. He's the talent's there. A 5th round pick in 2020 for Philadelphia. Um, like anytime a guy is taken by the Eagles, that's a really good vouch. A really good vet. Like, hey, this is a guy that a really high value organization, top to bottom. Uh, you know, liked and took a chance on, and for whatever reason it didn't work out, but here he is. He's been with the Chargers. I think he got here sometime in the middle of last season, and it's just a guy, I think, in my opinion, that needed an opportunity, and he's gotten one, and he continues to get one, I think, in camp, as long as Jalen Guyton cannot perform. um like I said, I mean, this is something that could I mean, again, I think, this is a great transition from Dustin Hopkins to Jalen Guyton, because I think they could probably be in similar boats. And that is, in a perfect world, they probably are on this roster. They haven't done anything for them to not warrant them being on it, but that's just how this business works. There's other guys that are going to come up and steal your spots. And this is something that is a area of concern for me personally with Brandon Staley and his regime, is just the development and the evaluation of players and talent, and how they go about putting together this roster. I mean, we saw it last year a little bit with just, you know, guys coming up through the cracks that were balling out, outperforming some starters on this team. So, that's a different conversation to be had, but um yeah, man, I think John Hightower at this moment is the wide receiver 5. I know Jalen Guyton's going to have a chance to put his spin on it, but to me, I mean, if you ask me today, that's who I'm saying is our 5th wide receiver.
You think that there's any chance that Darius Davis can get brought into the conversation?
I think he deserves to be mentioned. It sounds like, he's definitely. I mean, he's going to make the roster. It sounds like he's going to be the starting kick and punt returner. There's value there, and I think that position battle is pretty set in stone at the moment. But it does also sound like, I mean, just news and notes coming out of camp from some different people. It sounds like he's still got a little bit of development to do, not only on the physical side, but also, just, X's and O's, I think, a little bit. So I don't see, I mean, look, someone like Hightower or even Guyton, um, I think you value that experience, not only just, NFL experience, but experience being in this system. And although we haven't seen Hightower in a game yet. I mean, he's been here for a little bit now. He kind of knows how things operate, and yeah, Darius Davis is definitely going to make this roster, but it might just be a special teams rookie campaign for him.
Yeah, I think so too. But I think with that being said, man, John Hightower, I think should be locked in as our wide receiver 5, barring any other drastic changes this offseason. I think it's curtains closed for Jalen Guyton's tenure as a Charger, unfortunately. Um,
You
well, I
do?
mean,
So you giving up on Guyton?
well, let's be honest, we're not carrying 7 receivers. If Darius
Oh,
Davis, if Darius Davis is our return guy, that's already 6. And as of now, John Hightower showed me plenty in camp to
yep.
give me enough of a reason to put him over Jalen Guyton on this depth chart. So, bearing some unforeseen struggles come preseason, I think John Hightower, kind of like the Cameron Dicker situation, is running away with this wide receiver 5.
Yeah. And back to Darius Davis for a quick second. I mean, who's to say that, he starts the season as primarily a returner, um, not doing much else, but the NFL, we've seen guys develop. I mean, guys can develop even just over the course of one season. I mean, they can take huge strides. A lot of it sometimes is just getting comfortable being out there, with the scheme, knowing where to be. But who's to say that he can't come on later in the season and maybe due to injury here and there, maybe due to something else, but even if it's just something as small as incorporating like a gadget play for him, it's just little things to kind of maybe catch opponents off guard, you know later in the season when it's a divisional opponent and they've already seen you one time, and you got to spice things up to you know see what you can get. But I mean that could happen as well. But yeah, with Jalen Guyton, I agree with you. I just don't see. Again, we'll have the preseason to kind of see, um, if he's going to put any sort of stamp on this competition. But yeah, I mean, I think John Hightower has already shown enough to convince me and hopefully Brandon Staley that he is the guy.
You describing Darius Davis right there was literally what DeAndre Carter was last season.
Yeah,
So, I'll take it. I'll take a guy with some wheels that we can throw in there. Just please, dear God, now that Lombardi's out of the system, do not run the same plays that we tried to run for
oh
DeAndre
god, yeah.
Carter with this
That I don't
system.
think we'll have to worry about, thankfully.
No. Yeah. So that's always a good thing that guy's at least out of the picture. But thank you. If our predictions are correct, thank you for your tenure, Jalen Guyton. Wish you
Yes.
well wherever you land. We had a lot of fun watching you with rookie Herb. So
Never forget your. I mean, there's a few Jalen Guyton moments up there. I think the biggest one is probably. I mean, he caught Justin Herbert's best throw of his career. That
he's caught
touchdown bomb.
two. He's caught arguably Justin Herbert's 2 best throws of the career last year against Jacksonville before he got injured, and then against the
Yeah.
Giants the year before. So hey, I mean, if that's a deep threat, that's a deep threat at its finest.
Yep. Yeah. So, I think we're in agreement there. Which now is a good time to make sure we're hitting all of this. We're not going to talk Staley yet, so we'll save that for another day. But well, we're rolling through here. Do you have any? I mean, we have our red flag segment, but anything else that you wanted to bring up? I mean, any other camp thoughts, notes before we jump into our red flag segment?
Just real quick, I just wanted to touch on Sebastian Joseph Day has been dealing with some sort of injury. I believe it's on his lower half. I did see a tweet put out the other day about a possible 4 to 6 week time window for him. I do not know the legitness behind said tweet, or I don't even remember the source that said it. But 4 to 6 week time window. We're what 5 weeks away from the season. Any thoughts on that?
Um, this team is very, very thin on both sides of the trenches. I mean, defensive line might be just as thin as the offensive line at this point, and losing a starter. I mean, although it's on the mild side, it could just be like you said, a week or two. Maybe no time. So again, that depends, and we'll have to kind of wait and see on that. But it's just another reminder to me how thin this team or how top heavy this team is in a lot of position groups, and this is just another one of them. So I hope the Chargers aren't done evaluating, looking for other interior defensive linemen to bring in to help out this unit, because there's some vets out there. This is the time of camp where you can sign some vets and bolster some position group depth. And I mean, I know they're going to get some guys back, but I also don't know what is the timetable for Austin Johnson and Tito Agbania. Do you know?
No, I mean, starting on the PUP list is obviously never a great thing, but I mean, with it all, everything tells me that they should be ready to be back by week 1. I mean, I haven't heard anything that says otherwise. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't think we have enough information on that. We don't have enough information on the Sebastian Joseph Day injury. No credible source has actually tweeted out. Popper hasn't said anything. Staley hasn't really said much. So, let's say we roll into week 1 and we've got a offensive line containing Morgan Fox and Scott Matlock against a Dolphins team that boasts not much of a rushing attack. I think that that's a game that we can survive. But then come week 2 against the Titans, that's when that defensive line has really, really got to be healthy for us, or else that's not going to be a pretty game for us.
Yeah, I agree, man. It'd be really nice to have Braden Fehoko on this roster
No kidding.
right now. But yeah, man, it just, to me, it speaks. It just says how thin we are at that position group, but hopefully it's addressed at some point in some fashion. And yeah, we'll just kind of have to see from that. But yeah, thanks for that note there, because I did have that written down, but I forgot. So
There we
that's
go.
key piece of the defensive line.
For sure. Hope to have him back. Best wishes in your recovery, SJD.
Yes, and while we're on the defensive line too, I mean, did just want to give a shout out to Morgan Fox. From all accounts, I mean, he's had a hell of a camp so far, looking good. Continues just ride that hot wave that he finished 2022 on, and I am going to be really salty if he doesn't have a much larger role right away on this team, on this D line, because
Well,
he was another example of guy last year that was brought in primarily as a depth piece, and thank God, because when the guys in front of him went down, he just stepped up and balled out and arguably outperformed the guys that he was backing up. So I think the Chargers found them a good one in Morgan Fox. I mean, they obviously invested in him again this offseason, re-signing him to a deal. So I love that he's in powder blue again this year. That might be one of my favorite signings of the offseason. And so regardless of how thin we are at that position group, he makes me feel a lot better about it.
dude, it's going to be really funny if, a couple years from now, we look back on the 2022 free agency class and Morgan Fox was our best signing over guys like Khalil Mack and JC Jackson. Not saying that that'll necessarily be true, where I'm expecting a big year from those other two, but really just a really underrated signing that we made, and thank God that we did. Definitely an uncommon Brandon Staley W.
Yes. Yeah. And another honorable mention, one that isn't even around anymore, but I wish he still was, Bryce Callahan. I mean, huge pickup last year that paid big dividends. So yeah, that 2022 class, man, loaded obviously, but yeah, Morgan Fox, I mean, he's balling out. So I just wanted to give him a shout out while we were talking D lineman.
I guess real quick, there's one other topic that I thought about. We can transition with 2022 class, but not free agency class, draft class. Popper put out an article yesterday about JT Woods' progression in the safety room. Definitely looking thinner at safety with Nasir gone. It's pretty much Derwin James and Alohi Gilman with, dudes like Raheem Lane and, as previously mentioned, JT Woods. Seems like he's still got a bit to go before we're able to see some really good reps out of him out on the field. Right now, it's pretty much just the physical traits that we've known about the last year. That's the only really exciting thing about his game. But we have gotten some updates. Saw a few camp videos on him. There was one play he struggled with. There was like a crossing route or something, and he was supposed to come up and jump it, or just misread coverage and went to the sideline, took a few plays off, came right back in and made a pass breakup very next play. So, just little things like that make me excited for guys that are, projects like JT Woods. I mean, there's a reason why this team invested a third-round pick in him. It's obviously with the belief that he can be a starter in this defensive backfield someday, hopefully alongside Derwin James. But yeah, man, I don't know if you were able to peep that article or see any of his plays, but I don't know. What do you think about how comfortable would you be seeing JT Woods out on an NFL field right now?
I wasn't able to read that article, but no, that's another great point to bring up and a great question. To be 100% honest with you, I would not be that confident as of right now, but what I was trending towards saying before you asked me that was, I do think this is a really great opportunity for JT Woods, to go out there, go out and win that, that third string battle, go out and show this staff that, hey, I've taken strides, I've improved my game, and I can go out there and be the third safety. I can be out Raheem Lane. That's kind of step one for JT Woods. I mean, if we're being honest, and I don't even know, I think that can happen, and I don't even know if that'll happen this season. That might take some time to do that, but I eventually think that does happen, and we will see more of him out on the field. I do think, and he's going to have to be ready, because I do think he's going to see more snaps this year than he did last year, even though he didn't see a lot last year at all. But I do think it's going to increase somewhat this season. So I would like to see him take a step forward as far as, playing with confidence. I think with a lot of young players in the league, that's a huge element that kind of gets stripped from them, when they first come into the league, and they'd kind of have to some guys can just, pick it up and, it's fine. But, I feel like with some guys that come in, and there's got to be a lot of pressure too, third round draft pick, that's when you're a third round draft pick and you're looked at as a project, that's a lot of tough pressure, because that's a lot of capital that the team's invested into you, but you're also a project. So, you would expect people to kind of have some patience, but people don't. Fans are like, why aren't you overnight? Why aren't you from project to start? No, it doesn't work like that. So it's just a tough position to be in. I think, a great guy, hopefully that he's getting some mentorship from, would be like Trey Pipkins, because he was another third rounder that, was a project and had a tough first couple of years in the league before he found his role. So we've seen it happen. It just takes time, and I think whether or not he turns into a legit player is a direct reflection of the staff as well. How that's a great evaluation of the staff. How are they developing talent and, players and all that stuff. So either way, you get some sort of data from it.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think he's already taken some strides, according to some of our defensive back coaches. I've just read it briefly in Popper's article that, they mentioned what you said. It's not an overnight kind of thing. It's not like you're going to wake up one day and be an all pro caliber player. It's a process. And I'm happy you brought up Trey Pipkins as well, because that's where my mind goes right away is, a third round pick that isn't going to show up on the field his rookie year, maybe is just going to progress his second year. But then third year is maybe when you're going to really start seeing some of those strides and develop into those nice pieces for your defensive backfield. So, I hope that he's able to take the same route as Trey Pipkins, and I am excited about the potential of seeing him out on the field. Am I 100% comfortable right now? No. I'm going to need to see some preseason games, or I'm going to need some sort of video of him really balling out. That's going to try to sway me otherwise, but I think that he does have the potential. He definitely has the athletic ability, the physicality, or the physical attributes, excuse me, to be a very fine player in this league. So let's just hope, man.
And there's going to be a lot of fun preseason football to watch. If you have been following this team closely throughout camp, I mean, there's a few storylines to follow, obviously, but it's also just going to be a fun evaluation for some of these second and third year players that we've been talking about so far in camp. Seeing more reps out of guys like Dean Leonard, Jasir Taylor. Like, it's not even just the rookies that I'm excited to see, or even like the kicking battle and stuff like that. But it's preseason. It's a lot of those project guys like JT Woods. Like, how is he going to look out there? I mean, there's a number of guys that I get excited kind of talking about and thinking about. So there is going to be a lot of fun football to watch in the preseason, I think, just from a Chargers fan standpoint. A lot of depth battles that are going to be interesting to kind of follow along. But no, I'm looking forward to it, man. I don't even know who they're playing this week. Who are they playing?
Rams. I just looked yesterday too. I had no idea till I just looked.
Battle of SoFi.
They beat us last year, so but who cares?
We beat them in the regular season though.
True. So
all right, man. Well, let's do it. Let's get into the final segment of the show today. We have our 2023 red flag. So I'm going to set this up in the way that I was telling you about it earlier. So let's say you walk into a bar, all right, and you sit down, you order a drink, you look over, you see a very, very attractive girl, right? Woman, lady.
Man, if you're gay, but yes, woman.
And you walk up, you start a conversation. After a few minutes, you're convinced she's the one, right? You want to take her home. You want to, introduce her to your parents, family, yada, 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 right? But in the back of your mind, you do have a sliver moment of, okay, what am I missing? Are there any red flags here that I should be aware of? Right? This 2023 Chargers team is very similar to a lot of previous teams that we've watched and cheered on in the last few seasons. Very, very sexy in the preseason, very appealing, right? Kind of catches everyone's eyes from the get-go. And what we're used to seeing really is it just kind of fizzle out, right? There's a lot of red flags that we choose to ignore, and we just kind of go into the season and be like, hey, no, this is it, man. Herbo, we got a chance. Nothing else matters. So I really just wanted to kind of get your personal, red flags for this 2023 team. What are some things that, of course we love them, we're ride or dies. We're loyal to the end, even if they're not loyal to us. But what are some red flags this season on this current roster that you have going into the season?
Dude, I was taking this really just the Chargers as a whole. They're such a tease. The Chargers every year are such a tease because you look at them on paper. You got one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You have one of the best safeties in the league. You have two of the best offensive linemen in the league. You're top 5 in several positions. You're top 10 in almost every position. But then the season rolls around and something just happens. And it's been year in and year out. And there's just such a tease. It's like you just can't. It's like if you were taking a girl out and she just, I don't know. How can I put this in a? This isn't a P. This is not a PG show. You just can't quite get it in. You leave with blue balls after every single date. Maybe you had too
Yep.
much to drink at the bar. That's one
Just
thing.
can't score.
Maybe you accidentally yacked in your Uber. Maybe
You
her
get it to the
roommate was
1 yard line,
home.
but you just can't get it. You can't push it across.
You get it to the 1 yard line and you neglect handing it off to Marshawn Lynch, and that is pretty much this team year in and year out for me. And I'm waiting for the year where everything goes all perfect. The closest I've gotten to that was 2018. Was probably the closest I've seen to this team really being able to put something special out there. But yeah, man, that's my biggest one for sure right off the bat is just such a tease.
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, look, every year they give us multiple reasons to believe they're going to be, a very competitive team, going to be a playoff team and should be a team that should be mentioned, at least when you're talking about, uh, just top organizations in the AFC. So, um, I'll give you one of mine right off the bat. I mean, for me, a big red flag I have specifically for this 2023 team is going to be roster decision making. I mean, construction. Uh, you could even say talent evaluation. I've said it a few times on this episode so far. Um, but Brandon Staley has a lot to work with this year, and there's a lot riding on it this year. I think. I mean, look, this is going to be year number 3 for Staley, and I just don't want to see guys that should be on the team not be on the team, or guys that should have a bigger role on the team not have a huge role at all. Just kind of be special team
Commit
players and like guys in the background.
commitment
You know,
issues.
right? Um, I'd like to see Brandon Staley take a step forward in that regard and just put the best player out on the field no matter what. Like none of this other bullshit. None of this. Oh, he's been around longer. We like him. We know him. Whatever. Like no. Like Jalen Guyton should not be a Charger. If Jalen Guyton starts the year on the roster, that's a prime example of the red flag that I'm talking about. Like it's that type of stuff for me. That's my first one. Like that's you know I did take a second when I thought of the segment. I was like, well, what are mine? Like, what are my red flags for this team? And that was one that just immediately like came into my head. So, I think that might be one of the biggest ones for me, but it's also just the first one that came to my mind.
Dude, I feel like another red flag. I mean, I could totally eat my words after this season, but is Brandon Staley himself. Not necessarily, it's a red flag that you can live with. It's things that you can get over, but it's the inconsistencies that we see out of Brandon Staley. Like you've mentioned 100 times, the talent evaluations, maybe, fourth down decision making, or, his decision to hire Joe Lombardi is something that can definitely be questioned.
Yep.
I think Brandon Staley is a definite red flag, and that's honestly, fuck it. Let's just get into it, man. Let's say, if we're calling Brandon Staley a red flag, how big of a red flag do you think he is? In another sense, what does Brandon Staley have to do this season to retain his job? What is like your minimum, what is your minimum amount of
Look,
satisfaction this team can bring you that you would be okay with them bringing him back?
well, honestly, a lot of it for me is it's just looking the part. I think some of the biggest defenders of Brandon Staley, they love to go to the fact that 2 years ago he had 0 games coached under his belt at any level. Not even like Pop Warner or high school or he's just always been a position coach, and now he's elevated into head coach. So look, the biggest defenders are gonna bring that up every time, but I think a lot of it he just has to look the part. Like his roster is talented enough. Like don't get in the way of it. Don't make stupid decisions in the fourth quarter. Don't, play to lose in the second half. Like you got to keep your foot on the pedal, close games out, and you're probably already looking at like a 10-game season again, and that would probably be another like lackluster year with this roster. They really should be sitting at probably like 12 or 13 wins. And where they end up at the end of the season, whether it's 10, 11, 12, like that's going to give me a really good indicator of how Staley did for the year. How many times did you get in the way of your team closing out a fourth quarter game? How many times, like just small things like that, and sometimes it's the smallest things. It's something as small as taking a timeout early in the second half, and it just comes back to bite you. So I think a lot of it, man, is just looking the part and getting out of the way. A lot of people forget, like before the Mike Williams debacle at the end of the season last year, like he had pretty much won back the fan base, for the most part, especially with all the shit that they had to go through last year, all the injuries they had to overcome. Like he really was, and I think we talked about it on one of our episodes last year. Like only Brandon Staley could lose the fan base again, in the blink of an eye with the mistreatment of the whole Mike Williams situation. So that's a lot of it for me.
Yeah, I forgot about that situation too. That'd be another thing that's a massive red flag about Brandon Staley is maybe also his injuries evaluation, or lack thereof, if you will. But yeah, dude, that's a really good answer that I never really even thought of. I like what you said. I think it's about passing the eye test this season. I agree with you on that. I was ready to sit up here and be prepared to say, if we don't make a playoff run or any of this bullshit, like I want him gone and all this. If we don't win, a certain amount of games, I want him gone. But if at the end of the day we have a decently successful season and Brandon Staley wasn't the reason why we lost games, then there's no question in my mind he would probably deserve to be retained in that sense.
Yeah, 100%. Sorry, I had to plug my laptop in so it wouldn't die. Um, dude, I think he would never even had been on this warm seat, I guess, if you want to call it, in the first place, had he not, just flub up a few decisions last year. And look, head coaches always get the, they're, you know, general manager sometimes, yes, but most times it's just the head coach. That's kind of where the buck stops. And he's going to have to take blame for all the wins and losses, but he definitely did deserve some criticism last year for some of the decisions. And yeah, I think this is going to be a big year for him. Because let's say they make the playoffs. There still can be a world where you make the playoffs and people are not sold on you. I mean, this last season, we made the playoffs and people were like, it was so mixed after last year. I mean, like right after the 27-0 loss, like everyone wanted him gone. Like, it was inexcusable. How do you excuse a 27-0? Like how? And I just hope he learns from those situations. He talks a big game, and I'm willing to give him the fair share of just benefit of the doubt, I guess. And he doesn't have to be this new wonder kid coach, like this new guru. He just has to manage the game well and let his superstar quarterback go out and win him games.
And let's certainly hope to God that's what we're going to see on the field this year. I think a lot of the criticism last year needs to be placed on things such as injuries, poor OC. There's just a lot of shit that went into last season that, Brandon Staley definitely deserves some of the blame. But to say that everything that happened, especially at the end of last season, was all on Brandon Staley is just not a fair statement whatsoever.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to spend this whole segment trying to shit on Staley because I do think there's a lot of good that he has brought to the organization. I think the mindset of fourth and Staley and not being afraid to go for it, and just the overall aggressiveness that he brings. Um, I mean, he's the first coach in Tom Telesco's tenure to convince him to go out and spend money and bring in guys like Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa, or J.C. Jackson, and other guys in one offseason. That wasn't just like a over the course. No, like that happened in his first offseason as a coach. So that's impressive. I think he has changed the culture in a better way than some of the previous regimes ever did. So that's that's something they have to give him credit for as well. And again, I think Brandon Staley can be the Chargers coach for a long time. And when I say a long time, anywhere from like that 5 to 10 year range, if not longer. I don't know if that's the case, but I definitely see him spending close to a decade here if he just learns from his mistakes and addresses them. And I think he has. Like, he fired Joe Lombardi and went out and got one of the better younger offensive minds in football. So that, I think, has to, you have to give him credit for that. If we're gonna judge his decision making to bring in Lombardi in the first place, we also have to give him credit for moving on and going and upgrading to Kellen Moore. So, look, I think he's going to learn. Like, he's just going to continue to get better, I think, hopefully. And if that's the case, there's no reason this team, barring an absolute injury riddled season, there's no reason this team, in my opinion, shouldn't win at least 11 games.
You brought up a lot of really good points that I never even fully took into consideration that I really liked. So good job. You really brought in my mindset there. But
Thanks,
yeah,
man.
I'm not gonna put a total number on games won that I'll feel good about to retain Staley. I don't think that's fair as of quite yet, because you're right. He's brought a lot of stuff to the table. We're in a new era of Chargers football, and Staley was kind of the welcoming into that. Obviously, Justin Herbert's first season had Anthony Lynn at the helm, but I mean, really, just the end of that season was one of the most forgettable things probably ever. So Staley is kind of the new regime of Chargers football as long as he's here to stay. So, he's got a lot to prove this season, but I think that he's capable of doing so.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's going to be a different landscape this year. Obviously, there's some teams that are going to be trying to make serious playoff pushes, and we'll kind of have to see, what that looks like over the first few weeks of the season, how things are shaking out. But there's no reason this team shouldn't be in the playoffs. At the very least, as a wild card. Can they? This year they finally put together a competitive enough year to win a division. We'll see. It's definitely, they can do it. They can win this division. And the only reason I say that, and the only reason I know that, is because of 2018. And had they not lost to Denver on some bullshit, and had they not lost to Baltimore on a bullshit Saturday night game, they would have won the division. So it's just little things like that. Like, they were so close. They had the best record in the AFC, were tied for the best record in the AFC that year, and had to go on the road for the playoffs. So just didn't shake out, but they're that good. That's with Phillip Rivers as your quarterback. I think, as much as we like Phillip Rivers, shout out Phil, Justin Herbert is more than capable of taking them, to new heights. So it can be done, man. There are some red flags for this team. There's red flags in every roster of every team right now, whether it's depth or whether it's coaching or whether, whatever it is. It's August, so there's time to address these things and to get better. And, we'll eventually find out one way or another.
For sure, dude. For sure. I'm really looking, like, I think next time. No. Yeah. preseason game this weekend. Finally going to see Powder Blue out on the field. Really looking forward to that. Saturday night, I believe at like 8:30. I want to say something like that. 8:30 Central Time.
Real nice to see some Powder Blue out in the field. Yeah, I can't wait, man. We keep getting closer. We're about a month away. We're a solid month away from week 1, which that's gonna hit like crack. That first that first Eckler screen pass that goes for like 45 yards is gonna hit like crack.
Dude, that first Khalil Max and Joey Bosa sandwich of Tua Tagovailoa is gonna hit so hard, dude.
That's a good one. Yeah, no shit. That's gonna be really satisfying. And then just seeing these 3 stud wide receivers lining up is gonna be insane to watch.
Bro, we got to get off here before I got to change my pants if we're talking like this. So,
all right, bro. No, this was fun, man. We'll have plenty more to talk about next time we meet up. Probably. Oh yeah, we'll have the first preseason game to evaluate and go over, and even more stuff. So, with that, man, let's go ahead and get out of here. Make sure you guys are following. Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel if you already haven't, and follow us on our social medias on Twitter, Instagram at Powder Hour Pod LA. That's at Powder Hour Pod LA for all the latest updates about the podcast and, of course, about our bolts. Bolt up.